Folks, welcome to our Week 8 prep football review. We're going to go over all our 8 games that we had playing tonight. Huge week. We had Pace and Pine Forest, Catholic Walton. I'm D.C. Reeves, sports writer at the News Journal. We got Jason Blakeney, assistant sports editor. We'll go over all of them for you. The one we were both at tonight was we thought it was going to be a great game. We knew it was going to be a great game. Really didn't disappoint. The score doesn't say it, but it was a tight game in the third quarter, and Pine Forest pulled it out 34-17 over Pace.
Right. Yeah, it was a Lucas Purifoy show, really.
Yeah.
He really dominated the game. His stats show it. Tons and tons of yards. He had 140 rushing, 120 passing. He had another 110, returning kicks. He was just amazing. He really was the difference in the game.
Yeah, and Pace got a little smidgen of momentum there, made it a 4-point game in third quarter. Boom, Lucas Purifoy, 96-yard kick return. And there, you see a lot of great players. We've both covered high school football for a while now. We've seen Division I players. But there's just a difference sometimes. I mean, you can see guys that come to mind for me, like Antonio Cromartie with the Tallahassee Lincoln, Trent Richardson, of course, at Escambia. There's guys that it's almost another level. There's Division I, and there's these guys that are just game breakers. And not only are they fast, not only are they elusive, not only do they stand out among other high school players, but they also come up with huge plays in huge parts of games, and that's what we saw from him.
Yeah, the funny thing about him was he was making a very good Pace defense look silly at times.
Right.
I mean, he was zigzagging back and forth. He's running 100 yards to gain 20. He's running 200 yards to gain 40. I mean, it really was amazing. It was a great display. And to take Tallahassee Lincoln's coach and quote him, this is why he's going to Florida.
Right, absolutely. And yeah, he gave, as I said in my column this morning, he gave everybody an opportunity to tackle him. He would run this way and run this way. And like you said, hey, now Pace's defense is no slouch. I mean, you'll see that they got 34 put on them tonight, but I think the highest they had any team was 17. That was Niceville. So that was another ranked team that could only score 17 on Pace. This is a fantastic Pace defense, a fantastic defensive front. So, I mean, that speaks volumes to how effective he was. Now, we were excited to see what he did, and it was a great, fantastic individual performance. But really, let's look at this from a team perspective. I mean, you talk about the leaps and bounds and really the accomplishment of Pine Forest and where this puts them with this key win on the road.
Right. They're in the driver's seat in District 1 4A. All they have to do is beat Milton next week, and they're done. They've got themselves a championship. And, the biggest key for them this week, they didn't turn the ball over. They did one time. And if you had told me going in that Pine Forest was only going to turn the ball over one time, my pick this week would have been Pine Forest and not Pace. And, that was really impressive. We got a hard time from a couple of the players after the game, wanting a little more respect. Well, you got it from me now, guys, because that was an impressive display. They looked like a top 10 team in the state.
Right. Every time I talked in public, I said, if you told me Pine Forest had only turned it over once, and the ironic thing is the turnover came when Purifoy left with an injury for that one play. That was obviously coincidental. Pine Forest is a great team, and they'd still be very solid without him, but they surely wouldn't be the state championship caliber team they're looking like right now without him. So, fantastic win for Pine Forest. And hey, all they got to do is win at Milton to lock up the district championship. But they can actually go 1-1 in their final 2 games. They have Escambia, they got Milton. They could actually split those games. I don't expect that they will, but they could, and they would still be the district champ. So they're in a very, very advantageous position. And as I wrote on Friday and again this morning, you've got a team now who's got the possibility of 3 home playoff games and of their 4 leading up to a state title. So if they keep winning, they're going to be at home, and that's huge.
Right. And another thing that we're kind of overlooking because of the way Lucas played tonight was the offensive and defensive line from Pine Forest. They dominated the game. They had nearly 300 yards rushing, only allowed 110. That's impressive. They held Pace to less than 4 yards a rush, something that people just don't do against Pace.
Right, exactly. Both teams said that these were going to be the biggest lines that they'd faced on both sides. So this was a true test for both sides, and obviously Pine Forest passed that with flying color. So huge win for them, 34-17 at Pace, and another game that really had a lot of district implications was Catholic hosting Walton. You had Walton at 2-0 in their district. They could win the district title if they beat Catholic. Catholic can't lock it up officially yet, but this was obviously their biggest competition. So Catholic comes, I guess they defend the home field. They haven't lost a district game since 2004, and they keep that going. They win 38-25 over Walton, and what do you know? Catholic scoring a lot of points.
Yeah, no kidding. if the passing game doesn't get you, the running game does. And if they didn't, then the defense gets you. They return an interception 100 yards, and there's just, it seems like they get the big plays when they need them. Catholic's one of those teams. It seems like they get stronger as the game goes on. They've had a couple of games that were close at halftime. I believe they were actually losing this game at halftime, and they come back in third quarter, blow the doors off, jump out to a big lead. And actually, the final score probably isn't as close as what the game actually was.
Yeah, Walton added a late touchdown. It was really 38-19 late in the fourth quarter, and the luxury that Catholic coach Greg Seibert has is this. You had a team in Walton that had a great defensive line, a couple Division I prospects on their defensive line who were in the first half having their way, from my understanding. I mean, that they were getting pressure. Well, then what do? You can go to the run game. You can start handing it off to someone.
Run those draws up the middle.
Exactly, and you've got a great running back. And then if they shut that down and they want to come clamp down on the run, then you've got one of the best quarterback in the area. So, options abound for Catholic, and that is such a nice luxury, and that's why, like Pine Forest, we look at them as a team that could really go deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're very impressive tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyway, big win for Catholic. All they need to do is win at Shipley to clinch that district. They've essentially, you can't even say they've clinched a playoff spot yet, but let's put it this way, they're in a very, very solid position to at least make the playoffs. So, anyway, big win for Catholic. Then we had Escambia Navarre. Now, this back to District 1 4A with Pace and Pine Forest. This game was almost a survivor game. This was the winner would still only have one loss in the district, and that means, hey, they're still hanging around. They're right there, and they could actually still lock up a playoff berth. Navarre, very impressive for the third straight game now. They have looked fantastic. They beat Escambia 51-7.
Yeah, look out, Pace. You go visit the Patriots next week, and that game's going to maybe determine who gets that second playoff spot. So that's a huge game. But, Colton Kane for Navarre, very impressive this week. He continues to run the ball well. He continues to pass the ball well. And when you can do both, it really, really puts the defense in a bad situation. And that's what's been happening every week to these defenses. You start looking at Colton Kane, then Dwayne Carter gets you. And, they're kind of looking at the same situation Catholic is, because they have a quarterback who can do everything, and then they have a running back who will take advantage when you start paying too much attention to the quarterback.
Right. You start talking about MVPs at this point in the season, you've got to look at Colton Kane as one of those guys. I mean, this is a guy that has pretty much changed the face of this offense. This is a guy that can run the football. It's a guy that can throw the football efficiently. I mean, you've just added a piece of that puzzle with him in there and it looks like they're rolling now, and their defense is strong enough to hold to contain some teams. I mean, he's looked fantastic, and who would have thought at the beginning of the year that Navarre traveling to Pace would be as big of a game as it actually is. But if Navarre finds a way and they go win at Pace, they could actually lock up a playoff spot now because they only have one loss. Pace would have two losses if they were to win, and they'd have the tiebreaker on them. So Navarre could even turn around and lose their last game to Tate and still be in the playoffs. So who would have thought? Big game coming up next week, but hey, the Pace will be ready considering the way they lost tonight. I'm sure they'll be ready for that. But another big game. So anyway, huge win for Navarre, 51-7, and the last one, the other two teams in 4A. This was really just who could hang on.
Right.
I mean, both these teams would need help to reach anything in the playoffs. Both of these teams are pretty much on the outside looking at it as it was, but Tate survives, beats Milton 22-19.
Yeah, it's one of those games that you had to think, what's my motivation if you're the teams playing as far as the district race. You're both pretty much out of it. It's for pride from here on out. Tate, got a couple of big pass plays, something they don't normally get. Alex Westergreen with a couple of big catches, and they pulled it out. They held on. Whether it's an impressive win or not, it doesn't really matter. It's a win, and that's what Tate needed right now.
Yeah, and second halves have just been a killer to Tate lately. Right. I mean, I saw them against Catholic. They were up 24-21 on Catholic, and they get run off the field basically in the second half. That had happened a few times already this year, so impressive for Tate to come back and respond after halftime. They were up 14-13 at the half. They hung on at 22-19, and struggles continue for Milton. Penalties piling up, miscues, too many men on the field. I mean, sort of just some sloppiness out there, and they really got to get that turned around, which is going to be hard to do when you've got teams. Your last two games are Pine Forest and Pace.
Yeah, that's tough. And the thing about that is, Bobby Johns really isn't running the system that he wants to run there.
Right.
Yeah, you got to think when he starts running that system, he'll turn it around just like he turned around every other program he's been at. Mm-hmm. But for now, you got to think maybe the Panther faithful are getting a little restless.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, he's had people are saying he's been in a lot of small programs and that 4A is different. Hey,
Right.
Football, winning football is winning football now.
Absolutely.
You know, you talk about Class 4A. Well, you're also at a Class 4A school getting a lot better players. You're
Right.
getting more players.
More.
So, you know, 6 here, half a dozen there.
Right.
You know, I think he'll get that turnaround once he gets, you know, like you said, his scheme in and his type of players in and that whole deal. So, anyway, 22-19 win there for Tate over Milton. And, well, I guess we'll just wrap up the other 4 games. We had 2 teams going to Panama City. And what do you know? They come back with the exact same scores. We had Pensacola High beating Panama City Rutherford 26-3, and we had Panama City Arnold beating West Florida 26-3. And yeah, so easy enough. You know, PHS sort of struggled with Rutherford early on, and but held on. Their typical ho hum, only allowed 3 points, and
yawn.
Right. And so you know, those were our 2 teams. We went 1-1 on trips to Panama City, and then we had Northview beating Jay 34-0. Northview right back on the horse after their loss to Freeport last week, and so you know they got to have that. They control their own destiny. They win the last 2 games in District 1A. Right. They're in the playoffs.
Right.
Last game we had Choctaw. Hey, they were up big on Washington early on, and Washington makes a big comeback in the 4th quarter. Not enough though. Choctaw wins 38-31, and it looks like. What you can take from this week is it looks like we're all these playoff pictures are really starting to shape up, and we'll even know twice as much as we know now after next week.
A whole heck of a lot.
Yeah. So anyway, you know, huge week, huge wins for Pine Forest, huge wins for Catholic, and hey man, we're really starting to look at this sort of cluster of teams: PHS, Pine Forest, Pace, Catholic. They could all make deep runs in the playoffs. They're all still looking good. So.
Yeah,
anyway.
that list, as the years gone on, that list keeps getting longer.
Yeah, you know? Usually that's funny. Usually it gets shorter. Usually we look at teams 4 or 5 teams and say, hey, they could be really good. We still have those same 4 or 5 teams that are looking good within their classification. So anyway, thanks so much for joining us. I'm D.C. Reeves. This is Jason Blakeney. We'll be here as always. Check out our preview video every Friday morning. It's on pnj.com. And then every Saturday morning, we'll be here to wrap everything up for you. We'll also have our Check My Stats Players of the Week video as well. So anyway, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at the end of Week 9.